You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Let's move on to our next topic, Graham, and let's talk about the second mindful cricket pillar, which is play brave. And it's the other four pillars in the game mindset framework mentioned in the book. You say that play brave tackles the fear of failure and doubt which creep into our minds, causing us to give up or even self-sabotage despite knowing we can be stronger and more powerful. You also go on to mention in the book that players who play to win do better than those who play to avoid losing, and those who proactively take the game on and their opponents do better than those who avoid mistakes. And we've seen many teams in cricket, Graham, in sport in general, but in cricket, not willing to play brave or risk losing the game in order to win it and put it on the line to win a game of cricket, because there are many reasons. Teams and players have self-doubt of their abilities, don't believe in themselves. Teams go through bad patches and they just give up in tough situations and just, we can't win here, we just might as well throw in the towel. And players who are uncertain about their spot in the team don't take risk and play cautiously because they don't want to get dropped. Those are just some of the reasons I think teams are not, and players are not willing to risk winning a game of cricket. You also mentioned, Graham, is that failure is the main reason. Being seen to fail let others down. That's why people don't want to play brave cricket at times. But cricket's been a game based on stats and on performance. Of course, you'll have a fear of failure, but it's a part of the game. You just have to dust yourself off and go again. Batsmen fail to score runs, bowlers fail to take wickets, wicketkeepers and fielders fail to take catches and run out opportunities. But it's also a part of life as well. But we still have this fear of failure that we don't want to fail in something. But when a team does play brave cricket, Graham, looks to take the game on and look to risk everything to put it on the line, then the results speak for themselves. Teams and players aren't worried about the consequences that associate itself with failing. Teams don't give up in tough situations and they find a way. And it's always great to see both teams be prepared to put it on the line, risk losing the game in order to win it. And those games make the best games in cricket. And as a fan, you want to see more of them often because they make the best games. And you mentioned in the book, there's 3 core principles: create your bold vision, put it on the line, hold the tension. So, Graham, how do all of these principles contribute to achieving a play brave mindset? And why do we have this constant fear of failure?
Because our 2 great psychological fears are death and abandonment. And it's probably going to get a bit serious for a cricket podcast, but we desperately want to be approved of, liked, respected by others. It's wired into our biology, our evolutionary biology. So it's very hard for people to do things that potentially they will be then seen as being lesser by someone else. So, and this is where it really comes down to, you asked a question about mentors earlier, that there's a really important concept, I think, that's very popular in business these days, called psychological safety. And psychological safety essentially is that sense of confidence that I can be myself. I can take risks. I can have a go at things, and it's not going to have negative consequences on me. I'm not going to be criticised. I'm not going to be cajoled, etc. Not to say you're not going to learn from it. So I think the first thing is that we just have, as human beings, a fundamental fear of rejection, of being seen to be lesser than we are. So number one is, how do coaches create that environment where players feel that there's more benefit out of having a go? The second is, as you said, I mean, the research shows pretty clearly that that when players try and approach success versus avoid failure, they actually do better. They're less stressed, they're more confident, they achieve better. So we know that that's the case. So a lot of it then, I think, does come down to coaches and creating team cultures in which players understand, how do I do that while holding my shape, while owning my space? So cricket's not perhaps like a lot of the football sports, certainly the Australian rules, footy and rugby, where you kind of go right to the edge of your physical capabilities, and whereas cricket, once you do that, you're going to lose your shape, you're going to lose that. So I think there's a lot to be said for coaches creating an environment where players feel that they can have a go. I think that's an important element. The other one I mentioned there, holding the tension, that the cricket is a game of patience, and cricket is a game where at various times, we know that, and we see it a lot. I think players have got a lot better at it with T20 now, just that ability to go, I haven't scored off the first 2 or 3 balls of the over. The tendency to then want to try and tee off and do something versus that ability to hold the tension. And, I remember working with the test team back in the sort of 1990s, and it was one of the themes that the team used at that stage, which was hold the tension. So I think, to me, play brave is not bravery in the sense of the courage to go out and face a fast bowler. It's the bravery to take the psychological risk yourself, to put it on the line, which is to be confident enough to back yourself. And sometimes that means you're going to attack, and sometimes that means you're going to hold back. And, the best exponent of the latter I've seen is MS Dhoni. I mean, his ability to time a run chase. There's times you're just going, come on, mate, you need to have a go at it here. And he would just get it right. Now, obviously, that comes from experience and massive skill and confidence and so on, and self-belief. But I genuinely believe if you can develop players' ability and develop teams that are more likely to play brave, and I suspect that's what McCullum's trying to do with England. And I reckon we saw a little bit of it in the 2 test matches.
Say that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk, sadly, we can't have the conversation with Warney, but if Warney was here, he would just go, mate, you've got to play brave. You've got to back yourself. You're not going to die wondering. Just go and do it.
Well, he was the best at doing that. Yeah. Obviously, if you can see the poster behind me, obviously,
I can.
Great man, Warney. And I was lucky to meet him, as so many people were. It's just a shock that he's no longer with us. But I always remember amazing Adelaide with Shane Warne, where he bowled from one end straight, non-stop on that last day. Yeah, that's the sort of attitude that I want to see. That's what he had. He just said, we're not going to lose this game. And everybody was like, it's going to be a draw. What are you talking about? It's like,
Well, ironically, a lot of that attitude, I mean, some of it's Shane, but a lot of it I would trace back to Rod Marsh when Rod first came into the academy. It was very fortunate again to have the opportunity to work with him at that stage, and learning so much from him. And I remember he was adamant that there is a way that Australians are going to play cricket, and that's going to be an attractive, aggressive, bold way of playing cricket. We go out there in order to win the game. And then I think around that, he also created an environment of players really being very strongly encouraging of each other. And while there is always inevitably pressure within those dressing rooms, I think the Australian Test cricket team is always at its best when it's got an environment in which the players feel confident to put it on the line. And I think Cummins, I'm sure, is probably a good example of someone that I think will create an environment like that. That yes, we have very high standards, but it's that psychological safety. It's the safety to be the best you can be, to have a go at it, knowing that you learn and you get better. And I think play brave is a really important characteristic within cricket, which coaches can create cultures that enable that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about McCullum, and that's interesting because him and Ben Stokes are cut from the same cloth. Both of them are very aggressive.
Definitely.
And he said recently in a press conference, he said, I challenged the team to be more aggressive and more fearless than they were in the last game, heading into the third test against New Zealand. So that's his mantra, and that's his vision for the team. And let's see how it goes. And that's what their one-day side has done, really. England's one-day side. They nearly got 500 runs the other day against the Netherlands. Playing that fearless, bold cricket. We're going to play our shots. We get out, so be it. We get bowled out for 100 odd. That happens. But if we want to play that fearless, bold cricket, then we're going to win more games than we're going to lose. Yeah. So it's something that everyone needs to think about a bit more.
I think so. I mean, when you look at some of the research that's done around tennis, and just there is such a fine when you actually look at the statistics, there is very little difference between the really top players and the next level. But the difference is what happens on the big points. And the top players win the big points. And when you look at what they do, they don't force errors into their opponents. They win the big points. They go for the line. They work their opponents into positions where they dominate those big points. So, yeah, that's the same thing. They play brave on the big points as opposed to holding back. And it's such an important characteristic to build into players. But it starts with young players feeling confident to be able to express themselves, and not be careful. Be disciplined, but don't be careful.
Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed our cricket discussion with former first-class cricketer and sports psychologist Graham Winter. If you want to improve and get better as a cricketer, I highly recommend reading Graham's book, Mindful Cricket. After reading the book myself, I learnt loads about the mental side of cricket and how by having the right mindset can help you to be the best cricketer you can possibly be. Head over to Mindful Cricket to get a copy of the book. Link to Mindful Cricket website is in the description.